I should have known something was wrong when Elise suggested the vacation with that particular smile, the one she used when selling marketing campaigns to skeptical clients. Bright, confident, and hiding something just beneath the surface. "Mark, honey, what would you think about a couple's retreat this summer?" She leaned against our kitchen counter, coffee mug in hand, looking like she'd already made the decision and was just informing me of it. I glanced up from grading my students' essays on The Great Gatsby, ironic, considering what was coming. "Sounds expensive. Where were you thinking?" "Lake Champlain, that resort Kara mentioned, Willowbrook Lodge. You know, the one with the spa and the golf course." She paused, took a sip of coffee, then delivered the real news. "Sean might join us, just as a friend, of course. He's going through a rough patch with Olivia." Sean O'Malley, her college boyfriend, the one she claimed was ancient history, but somehow managed to text at least twice a week about work stuff and old friends from school, the one whose Facebook posts she liked within minutes of him posting them, the one whose name made her voice change just slightly, softer, more careful. I set down my red pen and looked at her directly. "Sean's coming on our couple's retreat." "Not like that. God, Mark, you're so suspicious sometimes. We're all adults here. He's bringing Olivia anyway. You remember her, the Instagram girl? Plus Kara and David are coming, and maybe the Hendersons if they can get a babysitter." The thing about teaching high school English for 15 years is that you develop a finely tuned radar for lies. Kids think they're clever, but their tells are obvious once you know what to look for. The slight shift in posture, the way they over-explain simple things, the defensive tone when no one's actually attacked them yet. Elise had all the same tells. "Sure," I said, picking up my pen again. "Sounds fun." She blinked, clearly expecting more resistance. "Really? You're okay with it?" "Why wouldn't I be? Like you said, we're all adults." I turned back to Jimmy Patterson's essay about Gatsby's green light, which suddenly felt uncomfortably relevant. "When were you thinking?" "July 4th weekend. 4 days, 3 nights. I already checked. You don't have any summer school classes that week." "Already checked. Already planned. Already decided." "Perfect," I said, and meant it in ways she couldn't possibly understand yet. That night, after Elise fell asleep, I lay awake staring at the ceiling of our bedroom. The bedroom we'd shared for 16 years of marriage, the one where we'd planned our future and raised our daughter Zoe. The moonlight coming through the curtains cast everything in silver and shadow, making familiar objects look strange and distant. I thought about Sean O'Malley, with his tech company money and his vintage Mustang, and his complete lack of awareness that some boundaries shouldn't be crossed. I thought about Elise, who'd been working late more often recently, who'd started going to the gym at odd hours, who'd bought new lingerie that I hadn't seen her wear. Most of all, I thought about the look in her eyes when she'd mentioned his name. The same look she used to give me, back when we were dating, back when I was the one she couldn't wait to see. 3 weeks later, we were packing for Lake Champlain. Elise hummed while she folded clothes into her suitcase, a sound I hadn't heard from her in months. She packed her best summer dresses, the ones that showed off her figure. She packed the expensive perfume she usually saved for special occasions. She packed like a woman going to meet someone important. "Did you remember your golf clubs?" she asked, not looking up from her careful arrangement of shoes and sandals. "Don't golf," I reminded her. "Never have." "Right. Well, Sean does. Maybe he could teach you." Maybe. Zoe appeared in our doorway, backpack slung over her shoulder. At 14, she was old enough to see the undercurrents in our house, smart enough to know something was shifting, but young enough to hope it would all work out somehow. "Dad, can I stay at Madison's while you're gone?" Her mom said it's fine. "Of course, sweetheart." I kissed her forehead, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo. "We'll bring you back something nice." "Just bring yourselves back," she said, and there was something in her voice that made me look at her more carefully. But she was already heading downstairs, teenage moment of wisdom past. The drive to Lake Champlain took 4 hours. Elise spent most of it on her phone, texting and giggling at responses. When I asked who she was talking to, she said, "Kara," without looking up. When I glanced at the screen at a red light, I caught a glimpse of a contact name that definitely wasn't Kara. Willowbrook Lodge was everything Elise had promised. Sprawling grounds, elegant buildings, the kind of place where wealthy people went to pretend they were roughing it in nature while enjoying room service and heated pools. Our cabin was rustic on the outside, luxury on the inside, with a view of the lake that probably cost extra. "This is beautiful," I said, and meant it. It would have been the perfect place for a romantic getaway if romance had been the actual purpose of our trip. "Wait until you see the main lodge," Elise said, already checking her phone again. Sean texted, "They're here. Should we go find them?" They. Sean and Olivia, his 29-year-old girlfriend who looked like she'd stepped out of a fitness magazine and had the intellectual depth of a puddle. I'd met her twice before, at social gatherings where she'd spent most of her time taking photos of her food and talking about her brand. We found them at the lodge bar, Sean holding court with a group of other guests, telling some story that involved dramatic hand gestures and frequent references to my company and my latest acquisition. He looked exactly like what he was, a man who'd gotten rich in tech and thought that made him interesting. "Mark!" He stood and grabbed my hand in one of those aggressive handshakes that's really a dominance display. "Great to see you, buddy. This place is incredible, right? I stayed here last summer with some clients. The golf course is championship level." "Looking forward to it," I lied smoothly. Olivia air-kissed Elise and immediately launched into a detailed description of their drive up, which apparently involved multiple stops for her to photograph scenic overlooks for her Instagram story. Sean watched Elise while Olivia talked, his eyes following the line of her neck, the curve of her smile, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear. I watched him watching her, and filed it away. Kara and David arrived an hour later, completing our little group. Kara Bell had been Elise's best friend since college, a sharp, observant woman who worked in public relations and had opinions about everything. David was her long-suffering husband, a quiet accountant who'd learned to fade into the background at social gatherings. "This is going to be such a fun weekend," Kara announced, surveying our assembled group with the satisfaction of a general reviewing her troops. "Just like old times." Old times. When Elise and Sean had been together. When Kara had been the third wheel watching their relationship with a mixture of envy and fascination. When I hadn't existed in their little circle of shared history and inside jokes. That first dinner was a masterclass in subtle torture. Sean and Elise sat across from each other, and I got to watch them fall back into old patterns of communication, the shared glances, the references to people and places I didn't know, the way they leaned toward each other when they talked. "Remember that place in Burlington where we used to get breakfast?" Sean said, cutting into his steak. "The one with the terrible coffee but amazing pancakes?" "Murphy's Diner," Elise said immediately, laughing. "Oh my God, yes. We must have gone there every weekend senior year." "Every weekend we were coherent enough to find it," Sean added, and they both dissolved into laughter at some memory I wasn't part of. Olivia looked confused. David looked bored. Kara looked calculating, like she was running numbers in her head. I looked at my wife laughing with another man about their shared past, and felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. "What about you, Mark?" Sean turned to me with the aggressive friendliness of someone who's already won and can afford to be generous. "Any good breakfast places in your neck of the woods?" "A few," I said. "Elise and I have our favorites." It was a mild response, but something in my tone made him pause. Elise shot me a warning look. "Don't make this awkward. Don't be jealous. Don't ruin the fun." "That's great," Sean said after a moment. "It's important to have traditions as a couple." The conversation moved on, but the moment hung in the air between us. The first small acknowledgement, that this wasn't just old friends catching up. This was something else entirely. Later that night, after we'd returned to our cabin, Elise confronted me while she brushed her teeth. "You were quiet at dinner." "Was I?" "Don't play dumb, Mark. I know that look. You're being paranoid again." Paranoid. Her favorite word for my legitimate concerns about her relationship with Sean. Paranoid when I noticed how often they texted. Paranoid when I pointed out that she dressed differently on days when she knew she'd see him at social events. Paranoid when I suggested that maybe, just maybe, staying in touch with an ex-boyfriend wasn't entirely appropriate for a married woman. "I'm just tired," I said. "Long drive." She studied my face in the bathroom mirror, looking for signs of the fight she was expecting. When she didn't find them, she relaxed slightly. "This is going to be a good weekend," she said, more to herself than to me. "We need this. Time away, time to reconnect." Reconnect. With me or with Sean? I didn't ask. I was learning that the right questions would answer themselves if I was patient enough to wait. The next morning brought the kind of perfect summer weather that makes you believe in possibilities. Clear skies, gentle breeze off the lake, temperature just warm enough to justify minimal clothing. I watched from our cabin's deck as Elise selected her outfit for the day. A sundress that showed off her tan, sandals that made her legs look longer, jewelry that caught the light when she moved. She was getting ready for someone. The question was who. "The plan is breakfast at the main lodge, then maybe some time by the pool," she said, applying lipstick with the kind of care usually reserved for special occasions. "Sean mentioned wanting to play tennis later." Of course he did. Sean had mentioned a lot of things since we'd arrived. His new boat, his recent promotion, his plans to buy a house in the Hamptons. Everything designed to demonstrate his success, his availability, his superiority to present company. "Sounds perfect," I said, and kissed her cheek. She smelled like expensive perfume and ambition. The main lodge's restaurant was buzzing with the comfortable chatter of wealthy people on vacation. Sean had claimed a large table by the windows, positioning himself where he could see and be seen by the entire room. He waved us over with the confidence of a man who'd never doubted his welcome anywhere. "Morning, sunshine," he said to Elise, standing to pull out her chair. The endearment hit me like a slap, casual and intimate and completely inappropriate. "You look incredible." "Thank you," she said, and the way she said it, pleased, flustered, glowing, told me everything I needed to know about how she felt about his attention. I took the seat across from them and watched the show. Sean ordered for the table without asking what anyone wanted, recommended wine with breakfast because we're on vacation, and dominated the conversation with stories about his recent business trip to California. "The tech scene out there is insane," he said, gesturing with his coffee cup. "I had 3 different companies trying to poach me. One of them offered me a signing bonus that was more than most people make in 5 years. "That's amazing," Elise breathed, leaning forward like he was sharing state secrets. "Of course, I'm loyal to my current company. They've been good to me. But it's nice to know you're valued, you know?" I knew. I also knew that a man who was truly confident in his value didn't need to spend his vacation talking about it to other people's wives. Olivia finally appeared, looking like she'd stepped out of a resort catalog, perfect hair, perfect makeup, perfect outfit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. She slid into the seat next to Sean and immediately began photographing her breakfast from multiple angles. "The lighting in here is amazing," she announced to no one in particular. "Very authentic rustic chic." Sean barely acknowledged her arrival, too focused on his audience of one. Elise hung on his every word, laughed at his jokes, asked follow-up questions that showed she'd been paying attention to every detail of his life. I ate my eggs Benedict and planned. After breakfast, the group migrated to the pool area. Sean, naturally, had reserved a prime spot with plenty of lounge chairs and a view of both the pool and the lake beyond. He'd also, I noticed, positioned himself where he'd have an unobstructed view of Elise in her bathing suit. "I'm going to change," Elise announced, gathering her beach bag. "Save my spot?" "Always," Sean said, and there was something in his tone that made it sound like a promise. She disappeared toward the cabins, and I found myself alone with Sean and Olivia. This seemed like an excellent opportunity to do some reconnaissance. "So, Olivia," I said, settling into a lounge chair, "how long have you and Sean been together now?" 8 months, she said, not looking up from her phone. "We met at a gallery opening in Boston. I was there for work. I'm an influencer, you know, and he was there with some clients." "That's nice. Must be serious if he's bringing you on vacation with old friends." Something flickered across her face. Uncertainty, maybe, or suspicion. "Yeah, well, Sean's very social. He likes having people around." Sean, meanwhile, was scanning the pool area like a predator looking for prey. When Elise emerged from the changing area in a red bikini that left very little to the imagination, his attention snapped to her with laser focus. "Wow," he said, loud enough for half the pool to hear. "Elise, you look fantastic. Marriage is definitely agreeing with you." She blushed, actually blushed, and did a little spin to show off the suit. "You think?" I wasn't sure about the color. "The color is perfect. Everything about it is perfect." I watched this exchange from behind my sunglasses, taking mental notes. The way he looked at her wasn't the way you look at a friend's wife. It was the way you look at something you want to possess. The way she looked at him wasn't the way you look at an old friend, either. It was the way you look at someone you're trying to impress, someone whose opinion matters more than it should. "I think I'll go for a swim," I announced, standing up. "Anyone want to join me?" "Maybe later," Elise said, settling onto the lounge chair next to Sean's. "I want to work on my tan first." Of course she did, right there, where Sean could watch her oil herself up and make appreciative comments about how good she looked. I dove into the pool and swam laps, using the physical activity to burn off the anger building in my chest. Underwater, everything was quiet and blue and simple. No lies, no games, no pretense. Just the rhythm of stroke and breath, stroke and breath. When I surfaced after 20 minutes, I found that Kara and David had arrived and claimed chairs near Sean and Elise. Kara was watching the interaction between my wife and her ex with the fascination of someone observing a particularly interesting social experiment. "Mark," she called out, "come sit with us. We were just talking about the old days." The old days. Code for the time when Sean and Elise were together and everyone pretended it was the greatest love story ever told. I grabbed a towel and joined the group, settling into the chair next to David, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else on Earth. "Sean was just telling us about his new boat," Kara said, her eyes bright with mischief. "Apparently it's quite impressive." 42-foot Catalina, Sean said proudly. "Sleep 6, full galley, all the latest navigation equipment. I'm planning to sail her down to the Caribbean this winter." "That sounds amazing," Elise said. "I've always wanted to learn to sail." "I could teach you," Sean offered immediately. "It's easier than you think, once you get the basics down. Maybe next time you're in Boston, we could take her out for a day trip." Next time, she was in Boston. Like that was a regular occurrence, like she had business there that didn't involve her husband. "I'd love that," she said, and I heard the genuine enthusiasm in her voice. The same enthusiasm that used to be reserved for plans we made together. "What about you, Mark?" Sean turned to me with that aggressive friendliness again. "You interested in learning to sail?" "Not particularly," I said. "I prefer to keep my feet on dry land." "Ah, a landlubber. Nothing wrong with that. Not everyone's cut out for life on the water." The dismissal was subtle but clear. Another point in Sean's favor. Another way to demonstrate that he was the adventurous one, the exciting one, the one who could offer Elise experiences her boring husband never could. "Mark's more of a books and quiet evenings type," Elise said, and there was something in her tone that made it sound like an apology. "He's very intellectual." Intellectual? The way she said it made it sound like a polite word for boring. "Nothing wrong with that either," Sean said magnanimously. "Takes all types, right? Someone has to stay home and grade papers while the rest of us are out having adventures." The conversation continued around me, but I'd stopped listening. Instead, I was watching body language, cataloging glances, noting the way Elise and Sean seemed to exist in their own private bubble, even when surrounded by other people. When Elise got up to get drinks from the pool bar, Sean's eyes followed her across the deck. When she bent over to pick up her sunglasses, he didn't look away. When she laughed at something the bartender said, Sean's jaw tightened with what looked suspiciously like jealousy. And when she returned with drinks for everyone, she handed Sean his first, their fingers brushing in a contact that lasted just a fraction too long. "I think I'll go back to the cabin," I announced, standing up. "Maybe read for a while." "You sure?" Elise asked, but she was already turning back to Sean. "We were thinking about playing some volleyball later. I'm sure. You all have fun." I walked away from the pool, feeling their eyes on my back. Let them think I was sulking, or jealous, or just antisocial. Let them relax into their little bubble of shared history and mutual attraction. Because while they were busy reliving their college romance, I was going to be busy planning their future disappointment. Back in our cabin, I opened my laptop and did some research. Sean O'Malley, Vice President of Business Development at TechFlow Solutions. Salary in the mid-six figures, stock options, company car. Recent promotion, recent breakup with his previous girlfriend, recent purchase of that boat he'd been bragging about. More interesting was what I found on his social media. Photos of him and Elise at various social events over the past year, charity galas, work parties, mutual friends' weddings. Always standing just a little too close, always looking just a little too comfortable together. Comments on her posts that went beyond friendly, heart-eye emojis on her photos, inside jokes that I didn't understand and apparently wasn't meant to. A pattern of behavior that suggested their relationship had never really ended, just gone underground. I was still scrolling through Sean's Instagram when I heard voices outside our cabin. Elise and Sean, walking together, their conversation low and intimate. "Just like old times," Sean was saying. "Better than old times," Elise replied. "We're both more mature now. We know what we want." "Do we?" "Because I've been thinking about this for months, Elise. About us. About what we had." "Sean, I know you feel it too. The connection is still there, stronger than ever." They stopped walking, probably right outside our door. I moved to the window and peered through the curtain. They were standing close together, Sean's hand on Elise's arm, their faces inches apart. "This is complicated," she said, but she wasn't pulling away. "Only if we make it complicated. Life's too short to settle for safe, Elise. You know that." Safe. Another word for the husband waiting in the cabin, the man who'd built a life with her, who'd been faithful and steady and apparently boring for 16 years. "I should get back," she said finally. "Mark will be wondering where I am." "Will he?" "Because from where I'm standing, Mark seems pretty checked out of this whole vacation." They were quiet for a moment, and I wondered if Sean was going to kiss her right there on our doorstep. Instead, I heard footsteps moving away and then the sound of our cabin door opening. "Mark?" Elise called out. "I'm back." I closed the laptop and turned to face her, noting the flush in her cheeks, the brightness in her eyes, the way she looked like a woman who'd just been told she was desirable. "How was volleyball?" "We didn't end up playing, just talked by the pool for a while." She busied herself with unpacking her beach bag, not meeting my eyes. "What did you do?" "Read, relaxed, thought about things." "What kind of things?" "Marriage, loyalty, the difference between what people say and what they actually do." She looked up at that, something flickering across her face. Guilt, maybe, or fear that I'd figured out more than she wanted me to know. That's very philosophical, she said carefully. I'm a philosophical kind of guy. You said so yourself. Intellectual type, stays home and grades papers while other people have adventures. I didn't mean it like that. Didn't you? We stared at each other across the small space of our cabin, and I could see her trying to decide how much I knew, how much I suspected, how much trouble she was actually in. I think I'll take a shower, she said finally. Wash off all the chlorine and sunscreen. Good idea. Get clean. She disappeared into the bathroom, and I heard the water start running. While she showered, I walked out onto our deck and looked across the resort grounds toward the lake. Somewhere out there, Sean was probably congratulating himself on how well his seduction was progressing. Somewhere out there, my wife was washing off the scent of another man's desire while planning her next move in their little game of romance. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a plan was beginning to form. A plan that would give them exactly what they thought they wanted in ways they'd never expect. The water shut off in the bathroom, and I heard Elise humming again, that same happy sound she'd been making since we'd arrived. The sound of a woman falling in love, just not with her husband. I smiled to myself as the sun set over Lake Champlain, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. Tomorrow was going to be a very interesting day. The knock came at 11:47 p.m. I know because I was lying awake staring at the digital clock on the nightstand, listening to Elise's carefully controlled breathing beside me. She was pretending to sleep, just like I was pretending not to notice that she'd been checking her phone under the covers for the past hour. 3 soft taps, barely audible. If I'd actually been sleeping, I would have missed them entirely. Elise's breathing didn't change, but I felt her body tense slightly. She was awake, and she was listening. I slipped out of bed quietly, grabbed a t-shirt, and padded to the door in my bare feet. Through the peephole, I could see Cara Bell standing on our small porch, wearing jeans and a sweater despite the warm night. Her arms were wrapped around herself like she was cold, or scared, or both. I opened the door just wide enough to slip outside, closing it softly behind me. Cara? What's wrong? She looked up at me, and even in the dim porch light I could see that her eyes were red-rimmed, like she'd been crying or drinking, or both. I need to talk to you, she said quietly. About Elise, about Sean, about things you need to know. My stomach dropped, but I kept my voice level. It's pretty late for... Please. The word came out raw, desperate. I can't keep watching this anymore. I can't keep pretending I don't see what's happening. I glanced back at our cabin door, then at the other cabins scattered around the resort grounds. Most were dark, their occupants asleep or at least pretending to be. Walk with me, I said. We made our way down the path toward the lake, our footsteps muffled by the pine needles scattered across the ground. The night was quiet, except for the gentle lapping of water against the shore and the distant sound of laughter from the main lodge, where the bar was apparently still serving late-night drinks to insomniacs and cheaters. How long have you known? I asked, when we reached a bench overlooking the water. Cara sat down heavily, like the weight of her secrets had been physically exhausting her. Known what, exactly? That Elise never got over Sean? That she's been in love with him for 20 years? That your entire marriage has been her settling for second choice? Each word hit like a physical blow, but I'd been expecting this conversation for months, maybe years. How long, Cara? She was quiet for so long that I thought she might not answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Since your wedding day. I felt something cold settle in my chest. What? Your wedding day, the reception. I found them in the coat room at the hotel, and they were... She shook her head. They weren't just talking, Mark. They were holding each other like the world was ending, like she was about to make the biggest mistake of her life. But she married me. She married you because Sean wasn't ready to settle down, because he wanted to travel and build his career and play the field for a while longer, because he told her she should explore her options while he figured out what he wanted. The pieces were falling into place now, creating a picture I'd been too naive or too hopeful to see clearly. So I was the option she explored? You were the good choice, the safe choice, the man who would give her stability and security and a nice suburban life while she waited for Sean to grow up and realize what he'd lost. I stared out at the dark water, processing this information. 16 years of marriage, 16 years of thinking I'd won the lottery when Elise chose me. 16 years of being someone's backup plan. Why are you telling me this now? Kara pulled a phone out of her pocket. Not her own phone, I realized, but a second device. Because I can't watch her destroy you anymore. Because David and I are getting divorced, and I'm tired of pretending that marriages built on lies can work. Because someone needs to tell you the truth before you waste any more years on a woman who's never going to love you the way you deserve. She unlocked the phone and handed it to me. This is Elise's other phone, the one she thinks no one knows about. I took the device with hands that weren't quite steady. The screen showed a text conversation between Elise and Sean, dating back months. Hundreds of messages, photos, voice recordings, a complete record of their affair. She leaves it in her purse when she showers, Kara said. I've been documenting everything for weeks, waiting for the right moment to show you. I scrolled through the messages, each one a small betrayal. Sean, missing you already. Can't wait until next weekend. Elise, Mark's working late again. Sometimes I think he cares more about his students than his wife. Sean, his loss is my gain. You deserve so much better than settling for comfortable. Elise, I know, I've always known, but it's complicated. Sean, it doesn't have to be. We could make this work, Elise. We're not kids anymore. The photos were worse. Elise in hotel rooms I didn't recognize, wearing lingerie I'd never seen. Sean's hands on her body, her face bright with the kind of joy I hadn't seen from her in years. When did this start? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. About a year ago. Sean moved back to Boston, started showing up at social events. At first it was just coffee, just catching up. Then it was lunch. Then it was hotel rooms and weekend trips and elaborate lies about work conferences. I kept scrolling, finding planning messages for this very vacation. Sean, can't believe you talked Mark into this. 4 days together, almost like a real couple. Elise, I know it's risky, but I needed to see if this could work. If we could be together in public without everyone knowing. Sean, after this weekend, I don't want to hide anymore. I want you to leave him. Elise, soon. I just need to figure out the logistics. Zoe, the house, the finances. Sean, I'll take care of everything. Money isn't an issue for me anymore. I closed the phone and handed it back to Kara, feeling numb. Why are you helping me? You're her best friend. Was her best friend, before she started lying to everyone, including me, before she started using me as her alibi for hotel meetings and weekend getaways. Kara's voice was bitter now, angry. Do you know how many times I've had to cover for her? How many lies I've had to tell David about where we were and what we were doing? So, this is about your marriage too. This is about the fact that Elise has turned into someone I don't recognize, someone selfish and manipulative and cruel, someone who thinks she can have everything she wants without consequences. We sat in silence for a few minutes, both lost in our own thoughts. The night air was getting cooler, and I could see goosebumps on Kara's arms. What happens now? I asked finally. That depends on you. You can confront her, demand a divorce, make a scene. You can pretend you never saw any of this and go back to being her safety net while she has her affair. Or? Kara looked at me directly for the first time since we'd sat down. Or you can beat them at their own game. Turn the tables. Give them exactly what they think they want, but on your terms instead of theirs. I don't understand. Elise wants to be with Sean? Fine. Let her be with Sean. But not the way she planned it. Not with you as the understanding husband who quietly steps aside so she can have her fairy tale ending. Something in her tone made me look at her more carefully. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that Elise isn't the only one who can play games. I'm suggesting that Sean isn't the only one who can offer excitement and adventure and passionate romance. The implication hung in the air between us, dangerous and tempting. Kara, I'm getting divorced anyway, Mark. My marriage has been over for months. We're just going through the motions until David finds the courage to file the papers. And your marriage ended the day Elise decided Sean was worth more than the life you built together. She moved closer to me on the bench, close enough that I could smell her perfume, feel the warmth of her body. We could help each other, she said softly. We could show them what it feels like to be replaced, to be the ones left behind while someone they thought they owned moves on to something better. This is crazy. Is it? Or is it justice? I thought about Elise in our cabin, probably checking her secret phone right now, wondering where I was and whether I suspected anything. I thought about Sean, smugly confident that he was winning a game I didn't even know we were playing. I thought about 16 years of being second choice, of being the safe option, of being taken for granted while my wife dreamed about the man who got away. What exactly are you proposing? Kara smiled, and for the first time since I'd known her, it wasn't a nice smile. It was sharp and calculating and full of promise. I'm proposing we give them a taste of their own medicine, starting tomorrow morning at breakfast, where everyone can see. She stood up and held out her hand to me. The question is, are you tired of being the good guy who finishes last? I looked at her outstretched hand, thinking about choices and consequences and the difference between revenge and justice. Then I took her hand and let her pull me to my feet. What do you need me to do? We talked for another hour, planning and plotting and preparing for the morning's performance. By the time we parted ways, I felt like a different person, someone harder, more calculating, more willing to fight for what he deserved. I slipped back into our cabin quietly, expecting to find Elise asleep. Instead, she was sitting up in bed, her secret phone in her hands. "Where were you?" she asked, quickly hiding the device under her pillow. "Couldn't sleep. Went for a walk." "For an hour?" Time flies when you're thinking. She studied my face in the darkness, looking for signs of suspicion or anger. I gave her nothing, just the same mild, intellectual husband she'd been taking for granted for 16 years. "What were you thinking about?" I got back into bed and turned away from her, pulling the covers up to my chin. "Tomorrow," I said. I was thinking about tomorrow. She was quiet for a long time after that, probably texting Sean about my mysterious late-night walk, probably reassuring him that I didn't suspect anything, probably making plans for their next secret meeting. Let her plan. Let her scheme. Let her think she was in control of this situation. Tomorrow morning, she was going to learn that some games have more players than you realize. And some players have been watching from the sidelines, waiting for their turn to make a move. I woke up before dawn, slipping out of bed while Elise was still sleeping. She looked peaceful lying there, her face relaxed in a way it never was during our waking hours anymore. For just a moment, I felt a pang of something that might have been regret. Then I remembered the photos on her secret phone, and the feeling passed. I showered and dressed carefully. Not my usual vacation uniform of khakis and polo shirt, but dark jeans and a button-down that Elise had bought me for Christmas and claimed made me look distinguished. I'd never worn it before, saving it for some special occasion that never seemed to come. Today felt special enough. At 7:30, I knocked softly on Kara's cabin door. She answered immediately, like she'd been waiting by the window. She looked different, too. Her hair was styled instead of just brushed back. Her makeup was more dramatic than usual, and she was wearing a sundress that showed off her figure in ways her usual conservative outfits never did. "Ready for this?" she asked, taking my offered arm. "As ready as I'll ever be." We walked toward the main lodge together, and I was surprised by how natural it felt. Kara was an attractive woman. I'd always known that intellectually, but I'd never really looked at her as anything other than Elise's friend. Now, seeing her as a woman instead of just part of my wife's social circle, I found myself noticing details I'd missed before. The way she moved with quiet confidence, the intelligence in her dark eyes, the fact that she actually listened when I talked, instead of just waiting for her turn to speak. "Second thoughts?" she asked as we approached the restaurant. "About the plan?" "No. About what comes after the plan." "Maybe." She squeezed my arm gently. "One step at a time, Mark. Let's see how they handle step 1 before we worry about step 2. The restaurant was about half full with early rising guests and families with small children. I spotted Sean immediately. He'd claimed the same table as yesterday, positioned where he could see everyone who came and went. He was alone, checking his phone, and probably wondering where Elise was. "Showtime," Kara murmured. We walked into the restaurant hand in hand, moving slowly enough to be noticed, but not so obviously that it looked staged. I felt eyes on us immediately. Other guests, the waitstaff, and most importantly, Sean. His reaction was everything I could have hoped for. His head snapped up when he saw us, his expression cycling rapidly through confusion, surprise, and something that looked suspiciously like panic. He fumbled with his phone, probably texting Elise to warn her about this unexpected development. "Mark, Kara!" He stood as we approached, his voice artificially hearty. "You're up early. Where are Elise and David?" "Still sleeping," Kara said smoothly, not releasing my hand. "We decided to grab breakfast together. Hope you don't mind if we join you." Of course not, of course not. Sit, sit." We took seats across from him, and I watched him try to process what he was seeing. Mark, the boring English teacher, holding hands with his wife's best friend. Mark, the safe choice, apparently not so safe after all. "So," Sean said, clearly fishing for information. "This is, new?" "Not really," I said, signaling the waitress for coffee. "We've been talking for a while now, getting to know each other better. Talking. Among other things," Kara added, giving me a look that was pure performance, but felt surprisingly real. Sean's phone buzzed, then buzzed again. Elise, demanding to know what was happening, probably. "You should answer that," I said helpfully. "Sounds urgent." "It's just work stuff," he said, but his hands were shaking slightly as he turned the phone face down. The waitress arrived with coffee and menus, giving Sean a moment to collect himself. When she left, he leaned forward with the aggressive intensity of a man who'd suddenly realized he might not be winning anymore. "Look, I don't know what's going on here, but—" "What's going on," Kara interrupted, "is that Mark and I discovered we have a lot in common, more than we realized." "Like what?" "Like being taken for granted by people who think they're irreplaceable," I said quietly. Sean's face went pale. "Mark, if this is about Elise—" "This isn't about Elise. This is about me, finally realizing that I deserve better than being someone's second choice." "You don't understand the situation." "I understand it perfectly. The question is, do you?" Before Sean could respond, Elise appeared in the restaurant doorway. She was dressed hastily, yesterday's sundress, no makeup, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She'd obviously thrown on clothes and rushed over the moment she got Sean's warning text. Her eyes found our table immediately, and I watched her face change as she processed the scene. Her husband and her best friend, sitting close together, holding hands, looking like a couple. She walked toward us slowly, like she was approaching a car accident she couldn't quite believe was real. "Morning, sweetheart," I said as she reached our table. You're up early. What? She looked back and forth between Kara and me, then at Sean, who was staring at his coffee cup, like it might contain answers to questions he didn't know how to ask. Sit down, Elise, Kara said gently. We should talk. Talk about what? What is this? What's happening? This, I said, lifting our joined hands slightly, is me moving on with my life. Moving on? Mark, what are you talking about? We're married, we have a daughter, we have a life together. Do we? Because from where I'm sitting, it feels like you checked out of our life a long time ago. She glanced at Sean, looking for support or guidance or rescue. He was still staring at his coffee, apparently fascinated by the cream swirling through the dark liquid. I don't understand what's brought this on, she said, her voice getting higher and more desperate. Yesterday everything was fine. We were having a nice vacation, spending time with friends. Were we? Because I felt like I was watching you audition for a different life. One that didn't include me. That's not… I would never… She was floundering now, caught between her desire to deny everything and her inability to explain the obvious chemistry between her and Sean. It's okay, I said, and meant it. I'm not angry anymore. I'm actually grateful. Grateful? Grateful that you showed me what I was missing, what it feels like to be with someone who actually wants to be with me. I looked at Kara as I said it, and she squeezed my hand in response. The gesture was part of our performance, but there was something real in her eyes that made my pulse quicken. Kara? Elise said, turning to her friend with desperate hope. Tell him this is crazy. Tell him he's misunderstanding something. Kara met her eyes steadily. I can't do that, Elise, because he's not misunderstanding anything. What does that mean? It means I've been covering for you for months, lying to my own husband about where you were and who you were with, watching you plan this elaborate vacation so you could be with Sean while your husband played the role of the oblivious cuckold. The word hit the table like a slap. Several nearby diners looked over, drawn by the rising tension. Kara, please what? Please keep enabling your affair? Please keep pretending that what you're doing to Mark is acceptable? Please keep lying to everyone, including myself? Elise looked around the restaurant desperately, suddenly aware that their private drama was becoming a public spectacle. Can we please discuss this somewhere else? Why? I asked. Afraid people might see who you really are? Mark, you're being cruel. Am I? Or am I just being honest for the first time in years? Sean finally looked up from his coffee. Maybe we should all calm down and… You don't get to talk, I said, my voice sharp enough to cut glass. You've done enough talking. To my wife, in hotel rooms, while I was home grading papers and raising our daughter. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. How did you… Elise started, then stopped herself. How did I find out? Does it matter? The question is, what happens now? What do you mean? I stood up, pulling Kara with me. I mean, I'm done pretending this marriage is working. I'm done being your safety net while you chase your college boyfriend. I'm done being the good guy who finishes last. Mark, wait! But I was already walking away, Kara's hand warm in mine, leaving my wife sitting at a table with her lover and the wreckage of all her careful plans. We didn't stop walking until we reached the pool area, which was mostly empty at this early hour. I sank into a lounge chair, suddenly exhausted by the adrenaline crash. That was… Kara sat down beside me, intense. That was just the beginning. You think they'll follow us? I glanced back toward the lodge. Through the restaurant windows, I could see Elise and Sean in what looked like a heated argument. She was gesturing wildly, he was shaking his head, and neither of them looked happy. Eventually, but not together. Sean's not the type to make grand gestures when things get complicated. He'll find an excuse to distance himself until the dust settles. And Elise? Elise will try to fix this, try to convince me that I'm overreacting, that I misunderstood something, that we can work through this like mature adults. Can you? I looked at Kara, really looked at her, not as part of a performance or a revenge plot, but as a woman who'd risked her own friendships to tell me the truth. A woman who'd held my hand and stood by my side while I confronted the biggest betrayal of my life. I don't know, I said honestly. I don't know what I want anymore, except that I'm tired of being taken for granted. She leaned closer, close enough that I could smell her perfume and see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. Then don't be, she said simply. Before I could respond, she kissed me. Not for show, not for the benefit of any audience, but because she wanted to. Because in that moment, we were just two people who'd been hurt by the people we trusted most, finding comfort in each other. When we broke apart, I saw Elise standing by the pool gate, watching us with an expression of pure devastation. Perfect timing, as always. "Mark," she called out, her voice breaking slightly. "Can we please talk? Alone?" I looked at Kara, who nodded slightly and squeezed my hand before letting go. "I'll be right here," she said quietly. "Take all the time you need." I stood and walked toward my wife, noting the tears on her cheeks, the desperate hope in her eyes, the way she looked like a woman whose world was falling apart. Good. Now she knew how it felt. 5 minutes, I said. That's all you get. She nodded eagerly, like 5 minutes was more than she'd dared to hope for. But as we walked toward a quiet corner of the pool area, I couldn't help but notice that Sean was nowhere to be seen. Her great love, her college romance, her reason for throwing away 16 years of marriage had apparently found somewhere else to be when things got difficult. Funny how that worked. The drive home from Lake Champlain was the longest 4 hours of my life. Elise sat in the passenger seat, alternating between tearful apologies and angry accusations, while I focused on the road and tried to process everything that had changed in the span of a single morning. "This is insane, Mark. You're throwing away our entire marriage because of some midlife crisis fantasy about Cara Bell." "I'm not throwing anything away. You already did that." "I made a mistake. People make mistakes. That doesn't mean we have to destroy our family over it." A mistake. Like 16 months of hotel meetings and secret phone calls and elaborate lies was just an oops, a momentary lapse in judgment that could be forgiven and forgotten. "Where's Sean?" I asked, glancing in the rearview mirror at the empty back seat. She was quiet for a moment. "He had to get back to Boston. Work emergency." Convenient timing for a work emergency. It's not what you think. What I think is that Sean is very good at disappearing when situations get complicated, just like he did 20 years ago when you were ready to get serious. That's not fair. Isn't it? Where was he when you were crying by the pool? Where was he when you needed someone to stand by your side and fight for your relationship? She didn't answer, because we both knew where he'd been, packing his bags and checking out of the resort as quickly as possible, leaving her to deal with the mess they'd created together. "Kara's using you," she said finally, changing tactics. "She's getting divorced. She's angry and bitter, and she's using you to get back at me. Maybe. Or maybe she's the first person in years who's actually been honest with me. Honest. She violated my privacy. She went through my personal things. She showed me who my wife really is. I should be thanking her." Elise fell silent after that, staring out the window at the passing landscape. I could practically hear her mind working, trying to figure out how to salvage this situation, how to convince me that our marriage was worth saving. The problem was, I wasn't sure it was anymore. We pulled into our driveway just after noon, and I was surprised to see Zoe sitting on the front steps. She was supposed to be at Madison's house until evening, but there she was, backpack beside her, watching our car with the careful attention of a teenager who'd sensed that something important was happening. "Why is Zoe here?" Elise asked, her voice tight with new worry. Maybe she wanted to come home. We got out of the car, and Zoe stood up slowly, her eyes moving between us like she was trying to read the situation. "Hey, sweetheart," I said, giving her a hug. "Thought you were staying at Madison's." "I was, but Mrs. Patterson called and said you guys were coming home early and I wanted to be here." Smart kid. She'd probably sensed the tension in whatever story Elise had given Madison's mother, and decided she needed to be home to assess the damage. "How was the vacation?" she asked carefully. "Educational," I said. "Very educational." Elise shot me a warning look, but I ignored it. Zoe was 14, not 4. She deserved honesty, even if her mother wasn't capable of providing it. "Are you guys okay?" Zoe asked, and there was something in her voice that suggested she already knew the answer. "We're working through some things," Elise said, falling back on the diplomatic language of adults who think they can protect children from reality. "What kind of things?" "Complicated things. Adult things. Nothing for you to worry about." But Zoe was looking at me, not her mother, and I could see the intelligence in her eyes, the awareness that complicated adult things usually meant someone had been lying about something important. "Dad?" I looked at my daughter, our daughter, the best thing to come out of 16 years of marriage, and made a decision that would probably make everything more complicated, but felt like the right thing to do. "Your mom and I are having some problems," I said. "We're going to need some time to figure things out." "Mark," Elise said sharply. "She deserves to know, Elise. She's not a child anymore." "What kind of problems?" Zoe asked, and I could hear the fear creeping into her voice. "The kind that happen when people stop being honest with each other." Zoe looked at her mother, then back at me. "Are you getting divorced?" "I don't know," I said. "Maybe." Elise made a sound like she'd been punched. "Mark, please. Can we at least discuss this privately before we... Before we what? Before we pretend everything is fine while we figure out how to spin this? Before we lie to our daughter the same way we've been lying to each other?" "I never lied to you." "Really? What would you call the past 16 months? The silence stretched between us, heavy with all the things that couldn't be unsaid. Zoe looked back and forth between her parents, and I could see her trying to piece together the implications of what she was hearing. "I'm going to Madison's," she said finally. "Honey, you don't have to," Elise started. "Yeah, I do. You guys need to figure out your stuff, and I don't want to be here while you do it." She grabbed her backpack and started walking toward the street, then stopped and turned back. "For what it's worth, I'm not surprised. You guys have been weird for months. I was wondering when one of you would finally say something about it." Then she was gone, leaving us standing in our driveway with the wreckage of our family scattered around us like debris from a car crash. "Happy now?" Elise asked bitterly. "You've managed to hurt everyone." "I've managed to tell the truth. There's a difference." "The truth? The truth is that you're having some kind of breakdown and using my friendship with Sean as an excuse to destroy our marriage." "Your friendship with Sean? Is that what we're calling it now?" She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. Even she couldn't maintain that particular fiction anymore. "I'm going inside," she said finally. "When you're ready to have a rational conversation about how to fix this, let me know." Fix this. Like it was a broken appliance that just needed the right repair manual. I watched her walk into our house, the house we'd bought together, decorated together, filled with 16 years of shared memories, and felt something that might have been grief. Not for what we'd lost, but for what we'd never actually had. My phone buzzed with a text from Kara. "How are you holding up?" "Surviving," I texted back. "You?" "David moved out this morning. Apparently our little performance at breakfast was the last straw. I'm sorry, don't be. It was time. Maybe past time." I stared at her response, thinking about timing and consequences and the difference between ending something and beginning something else. "Want to get dinner tonight?" I typed, then deleted it, then typed it again. "Are you asking me on a date, Mark Forrester?" "I'm asking if you want to get dinner." What we call it is up to you. Pick me up at 7. I put my phone away and looked at our house, where Elise was probably calling Sean to tell him about this latest development, probably asking him what they should do next, probably discovering that crisis management wasn't one of his strong suits. 7 hours until dinner with Kara. 7 hours to figure out what I wanted my life to look like now that I'd finally admitted my marriage was over. I walked inside to find Elise sitting at our kitchen table, her secret phone in her hands, tears streaming down her face. "He's not answering," she said without looking up. "I've called him 6 times, and he's not answering." Shocking. Don't. Just don't. I know you think this is what I deserve, but what you deserve is someone who'll stand by you when things get difficult. Someone who won't run away the moment your relationship becomes public. Someone who'll fight for you instead of disappearing when it's convenient. She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. Someone like you? I used to be someone like that. But 16 months of being lied to and taken for granted tends to change a person. So what happens now? Now you figure out what you actually want, instead of trying to have everything at once. And I figure out what comes next for me. With Kara. Maybe. Or maybe alone. Or maybe with someone I haven't met yet. The point is, it's my choice now. For the first time in years, I get to choose what I want instead of just accepting what's offered. I headed toward the stairs, planning to pack a bag and find somewhere else to stay while we figured out the logistics of separation. "Mark?" I stopped but didn't turn around. "I did love you, I do love you. It's complicated." "No," I said. "It's really not. Love isn't complicated. Lies are complicated. Betrayal is complicated. But love? Love is the simplest thing in the world." I went upstairs and packed enough clothes for a week, listening to Elise make phone calls downstairs, to Sean, to her sister, to her lawyer, probably, trying to figure out how to minimize the damage, how to control the narrative, how to come out of this looking like the victim instead of the perpetrator. Good luck with that. My phone rang as I was zipping up my suitcase. Nate, my colleague from school, probably calling to check on how the vacation went. "Hey buddy, how was the romantic getaway?" "Educational," I said. "Very educational." "Uh-oh. That doesn't sound good." "It's not, but it's not bad either, if that makes sense." "Want to talk about it?" I looked around our bedroom, the bed where Elise had been texting Sean while I slept beside her, the dresser where she'd hidden her secret phone, the closet where she'd chosen outfits designed to impress another man. "Yeah," I said. "I think I do." "Miller's Tavern in an hour?" "Perfect." I carried my suitcase downstairs where Elise was still on the phone. She looked up when she saw the luggage, her face crumpling with fresh tears. "I'll be at the Marriott downtown," I said quietly. "We can talk about next steps tomorrow." "Mark, please, don't do this. We can work through this if I'll just what? Pretend I didn't see what I saw? Pretend the last 16 months didn't happen? Pretend that you chose me instead of settling for me?" She didn't answer, because we both knew there was no answer that would change anything. I walked out of our house and got into my car, feeling lighter than I had in months. Not happy exactly, but free. Free from the weight of pretending everything was fine, free from the exhaustion of being someone's second choice, free from a marriage that had been over long before either of us had been willing to admit it. My phone buzzed with another text from Kara. "Second thoughts about dinner?" "No second thoughts," I texted back. "Looking forward to it." And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I actually was looking forward to something. Not because it was safe or expected or the right thing to do, but because I wanted it. That felt like a pretty good place to start. The Marriott downtown wasn't exactly luxury accommodations, but it was clean, quiet, and most importantly, it was mine. No shared history, No memories of better times, no reminders of what I'd lost or what I'd never really had in the first place. I'd been there 3 days when the real war began. It started with a phone call from Zoe. "Dad, Madison's mom wants to know how long I'm staying here." "What did your mother tell you?" "That you guys are taking some space to work things out, and that I should stay with friends until you figure out your stuff." I could hear the hurt in her voice, the confusion of a teenager whose world had suddenly become unstable. It made me angry in a way that Elise's betrayal hadn't. She could lie to me, manipulate me, cheat on me, but dragging our daughter into her damage control efforts crossed a line I didn't know I had. "Pack your things," I said. "I'm coming to get you." "Dad, I don't want to be in the middle of—" "You're not in the middle of anything. You're my daughter, and I want you with me. If your mother has a problem with that, she can call me directly." An hour later, Zoe was settling into the second bed in my hotel room, looking around at the generic furniture and bland artwork with the adaptability of youth. "This is weird," she said. "Yeah, it is." "Are you really getting divorced?" I sat down on my bed, facing her. "Probably. Would that be okay with you?" She was quiet for a moment, thinking it over with the seriousness that some teenagers bring to important questions. "I guess it depends on why," she said finally. "What do you mean?" "I mean, if you're getting divorced because you don't love each other anymore, that's sad, but okay. If you're getting divorced because one of you did something really wrong, that's different." Smart kid. Smarter than I'd given her credit for. "Your mother made some choices that hurt our marriage pretty badly," I said carefully. "Choices that make it hard for me to trust her anymore." "Did she cheat on you?" The direct question caught me off guard. I'd been prepared for teenage denial, for loyalty to her mother, for anger at me for breaking up the family. I hadn't been prepared for matter-of-fact acceptance of adult realities. "What makes you ask that?" "She's been acting weird for months, staying late at work, going out with friends I've never heard of, buying new clothes and being secretive about her phone." Zoe shrugged. "Plus, that Sean guy at the vacation was obviously into her, and she was obviously into him back." "You noticed that?" "I'm 14, not blind. Also, I watch a lot of Netflix. I know what cheating looks like." I had to laugh at that, despite everything. "So you're okay with staying here for a while?" "I'm okay with staying wherever you are. Mom's been so focused on her own drama that she barely notices I exist anymore." That hurt to hear, but it didn't surprise me. Elise had been increasingly self-absorbed over the past year, too caught up in her affair to pay attention to the daughter who was watching her parents' marriage fall apart in real time. "Well, I notice you exist. And I want you to know that none of this is your fault, and none of it changes how much I love you." "I know, Dad. I'm not a little kid." "No, you're not. But you're still my kid." She smiled at that, the first real smile I'd seen from her since we'd gotten home from the lake. My phone rang. Elise, of course. "You took Zoe," she said without preamble. "I picked up our daughter. There's a difference. She belongs here, at home, not in some hotel room while you have your midlife crisis. She belongs with the parent who's actually paying attention to her." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means she knew about your affair, Elise. A 14-year-old figured out what you thought you were hiding so well." Silence on the other end of the line. "She needs stability right now," Elise said finally. "She needs routine and familiar surroundings, not to be dragged into the middle of our problems. What she needs is honesty, something she's not getting from you. I'm her mother, and I'm her father, and right now I'm the parent who's not lying to her about what's happening to our family. Mark, please, bring her home. We can figure out custody arrangements later, but right now, she's staying with me. If you want to see her, you're welcome to visit. But she's not coming home to watch you have phone conversations with your boyfriend while pretending everything is normal." I hung up and looked at Zoe, who was pretending to be absorbed in her phone but had obviously been listening to every word. Was that too harsh? I asked. Probably not harsh enough, she said without looking up. She's been calling Sean like every hour since you guys got back. It's pathetic. How do you know that? I'm not deaf. Also, she's not as sneaky as she thinks she is. My phone buzzed with a text from Kara. How's the hotel life? Interesting. Zoe's with me now. Good for you. Want to grab lunch? I have news. What kind of news? The kind that's better shared in person. We met at a small cafe downtown, far enough from our usual haunts that we were unlikely to run into anyone from Elise's social circle. Kara looked different again, more relaxed, like she'd been carrying a weight that she'd finally set down. You look good, I said as she sat down across from me. I feel good. Free, you know? Like I can finally stop pretending to be someone I'm not. What's the news? She pulled out her phone and showed me a screenshot of a Facebook post. Elise's Facebook post from that morning. Going through a difficult time right now. Please respect our family's privacy as Mark and I work through some challenges in our marriage. Sometimes people we trust disappoint us in ways we never expected. She's playing the victim, Kara said, making it sound like you're the one who betrayed her. I read the post again, noting the careful language, the implied martyrdom, the way she'd positioned herself as the wronged party. Look at the comments, Kara said. I scrolled down and found exactly what I'd expected, a chorus of supportive friends offering sympathy and asking what they could do to help. People who had no idea what had actually happened, rallying around Elise because she'd gotten her story out first. This is just the beginning, Kara said. She's going to try to control the narrative, make you look like the bad guy who abandoned his family for a younger woman. You're not younger than her. By 6 months. But that's not the point. The point is that she's going to use every weapon she has to make you the villain in this story. Let her try. Mark, I'm serious. Elise is good at this stuff. She's spent her whole career managing public relations crises. She knows how to spin a story, how to manage perceptions, how to make people see what she wants them to see. I thought about that, about the implications of going up against someone whose job was literally manipulating public opinion. So, what do you suggest? I suggest we beat her at her own game. Fight fire with fire. Show people who she really is instead of letting her control what they think about who you are. How? Kara leaned forward, her eyes bright with the kind of intensity that made me understand why she'd been successful in public relations herself. I still have copies of everything from her secret phone, photos, texts, hotel receipts, the whole digital trail of her affair. We could… No, Mark, no. I'm not going to destroy her publicly just to make myself look better. That's not who I am. Who you are is someone who's been lied to and cheated on and taken for granted for over a year. Who you are is someone who deserves better than being painted as the villain while she gets sympathy for being a victim. And who I want to be is someone who takes the high road, even when it's harder. Kara sat back, studying my face. You're a better person than I am. I'm just tired of games, tired of lies and manipulation, and trying to control what other people think. I know what happened. You know what happened. That's enough for me. What if it's not enough for Zoe? What if Elise convinces her that you're the one who broke up the family? That gave me pause. I hadn't considered the possibility that Elise might try to turn our daughter against me, but given her willingness to lie about everything else, it wasn't out of the question. Then I'll tell Zoe the truth and trust her to make her own decisions about who to believe. And if Elise tries to take her away from you, uses her connections, her money, her ability to look like the stable parent while you're living in a hotel? I hadn't thought about that either. The practical realities of divorce, custody battles, the ways that money and social connections could be weaponized in family court. You're trying to scare me into fighting dirty. I'm trying to prepare you for the fact that she's not going to fight fair. She's going to use every advantage she has, and she's not going to care who gets hurt in the process. My phone rang. A number I didn't recognize, but with a local area code. Mark Forrester? Yes. This is Janet Morrison from Morrison, Keller and Associates. I represent your wife in her divorce proceedings. Divorce proceedings. Elise had already filed papers. I see. Mrs. Forrester would like to discuss a settlement arrangement that would be beneficial to both parties. Are you represented by counsel? Not yet. I'd recommend you retain an attorney as soon as possible. In the meantime, I'm calling to inform you that Mrs. Forrester will be seeking primary custody of your minor child as well as spousal support and her share of marital assets. Primary custody, spousal support, her share of assets from a marriage she'd been actively trying to escape for over a year. I'll have my attorney contact you, I said, and hung up. Kara was watching me with an expression that was equal parts sympathy and I told you so. She filed for divorce, I said, and she's going for everything. Apparently. Still want to take the high road? I looked out the cafe window at the busy street beyond, thinking about Zoe in that hotel room, about the Facebook post painting me as the villain, about lawyers and custody battles, and the difference between being right and being smart. Yeah, I said finally. I do, but that doesn't mean I'm going to be stupid about it. What does that mean? It means I'm going to get the best divorce attorney I can find. It means I'm going to document everything and protect myself and my daughter. It means I'm going to be prepared for whatever games Elise wants to play. But you're not going to play games back. I'm not going to destroy her publicly, if that's what you mean, but I'm also not going to let her destroy me. Kara nodded slowly. I can respect that. Can you? Because if we're going to keep seeing each other, you need to understand that I'm not going to be the weapon you use to get revenge on Elise. Is that what you think this is about? I think you're angry at her, and you have every right to be. But I also think you need to decide whether you want to be with me because you actually want to be with me, or because it's a way to hurt someone who hurt you. She was quiet for a long moment, considering the question. Both, maybe, she said finally. At first, but not anymore. What changed? You did. The way you handled everything at the lake, the way you're handling this now. You're not who I thought you were, Mark Forrester. Who did you think I was? Elise's boring husband, the safe choice, the guy who'd never surprise anyone or take any risks or fight for anything that mattered. And now? Now I think you're the most interesting man I've met in years, and I think Elise is an idiot for not seeing what she had. I reached across the table and took her hand, feeling that same spark of connection I'd felt at the lake. Want to find out what happens next? I asked. I thought you'd never ask. We left the cafe together, and I felt like I was finally moving forward instead of just reacting to other people's choices. Elise could file her papers and hire her lawyers and try to control the narrative all she wanted. I had my own story to write now. 3 weeks later, I was beginning to think we might actually get through this divorce like civilized adults. Elise had moved out of our house and into a downtown apartment. I'd found a lawyer who specialized in family law and had a reputation for being both thorough and ethical. Zoe was adjusting to the new normal with the resilience of teenagers everywhere. Then Sean O'Malley decided to make his grand reappearance. I was at the house collecting more of my things, clothes, books, the few possessions that felt important enough to fight for, when I heard voices in the backyard. Elise's voice, and a deeper one I recognized immediately. I looked out the kitchen window and saw them sitting on our deck, the one I'd built 3 summers ago during a brief period when I'd thought manual labor might save our marriage. They were holding hands across the patio table, leaning toward each other with the intensity of people having a serious conversation. Sean had apparently decided that the coast was clear enough for him to resume his role as Elise's savior. I could have left. Should have left, probably. I had what I'd come for, and there was no reason to complicate an already complicated situation by confronting them. But something about seeing him in my backyard, at my table, Comforting my wife about the divorce that his affair had caused made me angrier than I'd been since this whole thing started. I walked out onto the deck. "Sean?" I said pleasantly. What a surprise. They broke apart like teenagers caught by a parent, guilty expressions flashing across both their faces before they remembered that they were supposed to be the wronged parties in this scenario. "Mark," Sean said, standing up with that aggressive confidence that had always annoyed me. "I was just what? Comforting my wife during our difficult separation? How thoughtful of you." "Someone needs to be here for her," he said, puffing up like a rooster defending his territory. "Someone needs to support her while you're playing house with her best friend." "Former best friend," Elise said quietly, not looking at me. "Right. Former best friend. The one who violated your privacy and betrayed your trust and convinced your husband to abandon his family." I had to admire the narrative they'd constructed. In their version of events, I was the villain who'd been seduced away from my loving wife by a manipulative friend. Sean was the noble ex-boyfriend who'd stepped in to provide comfort during my wife's time of need. "That's an interesting story," I said. "Very creative. Almost makes it sound like you weren't having an affair for over a year." "We weren't having an affair," Elise said, finally meeting my eyes. "We were reconnecting as friends. Adult friends who have a history together. Adult friends who meet in hotel rooms and exchange photos that would make a porn star blush." Sean stepped closer to me, close enough that I could smell his expensive cologne and see the vein pulsing in his temple. "You need to stop harassing Elise," he said. "She's been through enough because of your midlife crisis and your inability to handle the fact that she has a life outside of your boring suburban existence." "My midlife crisis. That's what this is, right? You hit 45 and realized you'd never done anything exciting with your life, so you decided to blow up your marriage and chase after a younger woman. Kara's older than Elise. Whatever. The point is, you're acting like a child, like a spoiled child who breaks his toys when he can't have everything his way." I looked at Sean, really looked at him. The expensive clothes, the perfect hair, the watch that probably cost more than I made in 3 months. The kind of man who'd never had to fight for anything, never had to earn anything, never had to consider that his actions might have consequences for other people. "You're right," I said. "I am acting like a child." Both of them blinked, clearly not expecting agreement. A child would throw a tantrum. A child would make a scene. A child would try to hurt the people who hurt him. "Mark," Elise started. "But I'm not a child. I'm a grown man who's finally learned the difference between what he deserves and what he's willing to accept." "What's that supposed to mean?" Sean demanded. "It means I'm done fighting for a marriage that ended the day my wife decided I wasn't enough for her anymore. It means I'm done trying to compete with a fantasy relationship that exists mainly in your heads. It means I'm moving on with my life, and you two can do whatever you want with yours." I turned to go back into the house, then stopped. "But Sean, if you ever set foot on my property again, I'll have you arrested for trespassing. And Elise, next time you want to bring your boyfriend over, maybe choose a location that doesn't belong to the husband you're divorcing." "This is my house too," she said. "Not anymore. Check with your lawyer. I'm buying out your share of the equity. As of next week, this house belongs to me and Zoe." I could see the shock on her face. She'd assumed I'd be the one to move out permanently, to give up the house and the neighborhood and the life we'd built together. "You can't do that." "Actually, I can. Your lawyer should have explained that to you when she filed the papers. When you abandon the marital home to move in with your boyfriend, you lose certain rights to that home. I didn't move in with Sean. I got my own apartment. After moving out to be with Sean, the timeline is pretty clear, Elise. You left our marriage to be with him. Now you get to live with the consequences of that choice." Sean was looking back and forth between us like he was watching a tennis match, clearly uncomfortable with the direction this conversation was taking. Maybe we should go, he said to Elise. Let Mark finish whatever he's doing here. Good idea, I agreed. And Sean? Next time you want to play the noble hero, maybe choose a situation where you're not the villain. I'm not the villain here. Aren't you? You pursued a married woman for over a year. You convinced her to lie to her husband and daughter. You helped her destroy a 16-year marriage and a family. If you're not the villain, what are you? I'm someone who loves her, someone who's willing to fight for her. Really? Is that what you were doing when you disappeared from the resort the moment things got complicated? Fighting for her? His face flushed red. That was different. I had work obligations. You had cold feet. Just like you did 20 years ago when she was ready to get serious. Just like you'll have again the next time your relationship requires actual commitment instead of just sneaking around. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? How many times have you told Elise you're ready to make this official? How many times have you talked about moving in together, getting married, building a real life instead of just having an affair? The silence that followed answered the question better than words could have. That's what I thought, I said. You want all the excitement of the forbidden romance without any of the responsibility that comes with an actual relationship. That's not true, Elise said, but her voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like Sean gets to be the exciting lover, while I get to be the boring husband who pays the bills and raises the daughter and deals with all the messy realities of adult life. Mark, please. Please what? Please keep pretending that this is all my fault. Please keep enabling your fantasy that you can have everything you want without giving up anything you value. I looked at both of them, these two people who'd convinced themselves that their love story was epic and romantic instead of selfish and destructive. Here's the truth, I said. You deserve each other. You're both selfish, you're both cowards, and you're both more in love with the idea of your relationship than you are with the reality of it. How dare you? Sean started. How dare I what? Tell the truth? Point out that your grand romance consists mainly of hotel meetings and text messages? Mention that neither of you was willing to make any real sacrifices until you got caught? We're together now, Elise said desperately. We're making it work. Are you? Because Sean still hasn't asked you to move in with him. You still don't appear together in public. You still haven't told your families or your co-workers or anyone else that matters that you're in a relationship. I could see the truth of what I was saying hit home. They weren't together. Not really. They were still sneaking around, still keeping their relationship secret, still avoiding the kind of commitment that would make it real. You know what the sad part is? I continued. If you'd been honest from the beginning, if you'd told me you wanted out of our marriage, I would have let you go. I would have been hurt, but I would have respected your choice. It wasn't that simple, Elise said. It was exactly that simple. You just didn't want to give up the security of being married while you figured out whether Sean was actually worth the risk. That's exactly what happened. You wanted to keep me as your backup plan while you tested the waters with your college boyfriend. Well, congratulations. You got your test run. How's it working out for you? Neither of them answered, because we all knew how it was working out. Sean was still unwilling to commit to anything more serious than an affair. Elise was still trying to have everything both ways, and I was the only one who'd actually made a choice and stuck with it. I'm done here, I said, heading for the door. Elise, have your lawyer contact mine about the house paperwork. Sean, stay off my property, and both of you, good luck. You're going to need it. I walked through the house I'd called home for 8 years, collecting the last few items I wanted to keep. Behind me, I could hear them having what sounded like their first real argument, about commitment, about the future, about what they actually wanted from each other. It was a conversation they should have had before they destroyed my marriage to explore their options. I loaded my car and drove back to the hotel where Zoe was doing homework and Kara was waiting with takeout from my favorite restaurant. Simple pleasures, honest relationships, people who chose to be there instead of people who were just settling for what was available. How did it go? Kara asked as I sat down beside her. It went exactly how it needed to go. Which means I finally stopped caring about their story and started focusing on mine. She kissed me then, soft and sweet and real. Not desperate or guilty or complicated, just the simple affection of someone who wanted to be exactly where she was. So what happens now? Zoe asked, looking up from her math homework. Now we figure out what comes next, I said. All of us, together. I like the sound of that, Kara said. Me too, Zoe agreed. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, so did I. Outside, the sun was setting over a city full of possibilities. Inside, I was surrounded by people who'd chosen